Welcome to La Vida Rosa. I'm your host, Pinky, and today we're going to be talking about Married at First Sight. So if you'd like to see more, then just stay tuned, like, comment, and subscribe. And without further ado, let's get into this video. Okay, you guys, this season, it's time to wrap it up. It's really getting excruciating to watch. I see why a lot of you say, oh, I only watch your reviews, or I only watch reviews of the show. I don't actually watch the show. It was so hard for me to get through it. That's why the review is up later than what I would have liked, because it's like the same old thing. No one is making any progress. Even when people do feel like they're moving forward, it feels contrived in some way. And then something happens and they're knocked back 5 steps when they already was at a negative. Let me just go ahead and get through this. So this is the episode where they didn't even go to their childhood homes. I feel like most of them are transplants, meaning they didn't grow up in Nashville. So how could they possibly take them to their childhood home? So I understand not doing that, but it kind of defeats the whole purpose. I'm going to go ahead and start with Gina and Clint because there's not much to say here. Gina is just so predictable at this point. Of course, she took him to her hair school, which I wouldn't mind if Gina didn't harp on her shop 90% of the time. I actually liked her story of her going to college for broadcasting and then switching it up. She made a pivot and tried something new, and it changed her life. Cliff could relate because he made a transition from being a pilot to getting into the tech industry. So that was cute or whatever. Gina, you a one-trick pony on this show. Like, girl, can we get something else for once? Same stale story every single time. And then on top of that, she invited the stylist from her shop to come over and hang out with Clint. And it's like, you don't have no friends or family you could have invited. Like, honestly, what kind of real insight is your workers going to provide? They're not going to do anything to, possibly mess up their job. Like, at least if you invited like a family member, they could tell an embarrassing story from your childhood or something. Like, what information can they really offer Clint? Like, everything you do comes off as paid promotion, a sponsor post. We're not getting anything real or genuine. Let's move on to Chris and Nicole. Chris and Nicole have a touching moment. It's a trauma bonding moment. I do feel like they can make it, but I feel like they both need individual therapy. Especially Nicole. She's like engrossed in negativity, and it's like self-deprecating. She's not really putting it on Chris, but that's a lot to deal with from your partner. They talk about their childhood. We've heard this story about Nicole being rebellious and sneaking out, cutting school, lying to her parents. She said she was constantly lying. She fell into peer pressure as a child. They would want her to cut. She didn't really want to cut, but she cut anyway because she wanted to be popular. She was a people pleaser. Chris felt some type of way because that is the type of woman that he used to date, and he's trying to avoid that, and he's, hoping that she's changed. Like I said, they have trauma bonding sessions. Turns out both of their mothers were in toxic relationships with men for longer than they should have. The guy that Chris's mom was dating was alcoholic, verbally abusive, and even threatened to kill their dog. He wished he would have spoken up because possibly it could have woken her up and she could have left out of that situation sooner. But you can't put that on yourself. She was the adult in the situation, and regardless of what you said, she would have did what she wanted to do. He then took her to a paint store, and this was symbolic of his father's paint store that he owned, and he used to work there. He didn't feel like he had his father as a role model because he could never please his dad. He would only see him every other weekend, and when he would work for him, his dad was just really hard on him. He would ride him, and he looked at his father as somebody that he didn't want to be. But eventually their relationship got better, and when he was having issues with whether the dog was going to stay in their apartment or not, his dad ended up meeting him halfway and coming to get the dog. And his dad loves Nicole, and that, all of this situation here has kind of brought them closer as a whole. And I thought that was great. That's beautiful. I want to root for them, but I just don't know how healthy their relationship is going to be if they do stay together. Let's move on to Jasmine and Airris. So Jasmine is talking to one of her friends about the situation going on with Airris. She's not used to being vulnerable in her relationships. She's very non-confrontational, so she tends to avoid arguments and things like that, so she doesn't make her partner uncomfortable. And I think that's something you're gonna have to work through, Jasmine. I can relate because I'm kind of the same way, but that's something that you have to get past, because you shouldn't have to suffer in silence. You know what I'm saying? You should be able to say what you need and how you feel without having to feel like you're walking on eggshells. And sometimes confrontation is needed. You have to have those arguments, or you have to have those disagreements and talk them out, and it helps y'all develop the skills to learn how to get through things. She said that originally when she first met Airris, she was physically attracted to her, but that's dying now because he's making her feel unwanted. So, you know, her thinking he's so fine, like he keep trying to mention that she feels like I'm a 12, that's dying down for her, because, you know, you constantly telling me how much you don't like me. Why would I continue to want you? I feel like she's checked out already. And no matter what happens at this point, he could flip and figure out that he wants to be with her. I feel like it's too late. He ended up taking her to a card shop because when he was a little kid, he used to collect cards, and he moved to Nashville as a kid, and that's the way that he would meet his friends. And he also said that he's an only child, and he would constantly have to move, and so it kind of made him easy to adapt to new situations. But also his therapist said in a way it's not the best, because the fact that he would move so often, it made him feel like it's easy for him to dip out of a situation. So that's why he would ghost people so easily. Like I said, she's checked out of the situation. He told that whole story. She barely responded. But then again, I'm not mad at her because he barely gives her any eye contact. Then they go on a double date with Shaq and Kirsten. Shaq pulled Jasmine to the side and was talking to her, and he asked her, you know, what do you want? He's still not attracted to her, and, you know, obviously it's working on her self-esteem. And Shaq was like, either you're gonna stay here and be my king, or we can just cut ties. And, you know, I feel like he gave her some, you know, really nice words of encouragement. He was very respectful. He wasn't flirting. He was just making sure, you know, I have my own wife, so I'm not trying to come on to you, but you're beautiful. You don't have to go through this if you don't want to. And so Airris and Kirsten, they're having their little side conversation, which wasn't really noteworthy outside of the fact that he did not break eye contact with Kirsten. Clearly, when he's attracted to a woman, he can make eye contact, because, I mean, he was all up in her face. Later on in the episode, he opens up again about his father, and he has a letter that his father wrote his mother. Apparently, the mother wasn't speaking to him for a few months, and, you know, the letter just talked about how he wanted to step up as a father. He read it to Jasmine, and she engaged with him this time, and, you know, she said the letter made her feel hopeful. And I don't know. Like I said, I feel like it's a flop. I think it's dead. He's not even attracted to her, and I feel like she's over it. So it is what it is. Let's wrap this up. Let's wrap it. We need decision date next episode. So let's move on to Kirsten and Shaq. So coming off the high of the last episode, we finally see them have some sort of physical interaction. I mean, they were tongue kissing and everything. And from what we know, they consummated their marriage. Personally, you know, I don't have the most hope in this relationship in the first place. But that last episode, it put a good taste in my mouth. Like, possibly, maybe, I have a slight bit more hope than I did before. This episode shot it right back down. We see Kirsten showing Shaq this home. She's in her real estate bag. She seems like she really does enjoy doing that, and Shaq enjoys seeing her show this home to him, because, you know, she doesn't really open up a lot, so to see her in her element was nice. This was a $2.9 million home, and she was basically, you know, saying, could you imagine us having a family together? And, you know, they really were going through the motions of, you know, the kids could be running through here, you know, they'll come over every Saturday, you know, it was cute. It was cute to see them plan for a family in the future. But then Kirsten gets weird. Okay, she said, could you see yourself buying a house soon? And he was like, in the future. And she was like, well, basically you need to buy a house within the next 3 months, because that's when your lease is up. And Shaq is thrown off. He was like, well, I want to make sure I'm financially stable first, because think about it, Shaq literally just got his doctorate. I'm sure there are some student loans that's hanging over his head right now. You know what I'm saying? So then she starts getting a little demanding, telling him, yeah, you need to buy us a house. You're going to be my husband. You have to buy me a house. And he asked her, well, how does that work? And she was like, oh, it works every day in marriage. I'm going to be pushing out your kids, so I need some good push gifts. And, you know, just, she was being very pushy and demanding. And, you know, especially for this to be their first conversation about buying a home, you know what I'm saying? And then for you to put it all on his shoulders, and then you had this crazy goofy grin the entire time. It was off-putting, to say the least. Obviously Shaq was feeling some type of way about that conversation. Later on in the episode, Kirsten took him to her childhood home, and this was the home that she lived in before her parents divorced. She said it was a happier time, but it also brings sadness because, you know, when they did get divorced, she didn't really understand, and she was hurt by it. But she also said the divorce taught her how to deal with obstacles in marriage. And she also talks about her father providing a home for his family. You know, there was some little underlying shade to that. And pretty much that's why she expects that from Shaq. Shaq understands, like, he wants to provide for his family, and he feels like that's something that you do as a man, and no one should have to push you or force you or, manipulate you into doing that as a man. That's just something you should want to do for your family. It should happen without force. And, she just kept bringing up her dad, how her dad was married before, so you're going to have to impress him. It's like, no shade, but your dad is divorced. Like, I get it. Like, I'm not saying divorced people can't give you relationship advice. And I'm not even saying that, because you got a divorce, that it was necessarily your fault or it was anybody's fault. Maybe y'all just didn't belong together, whatever. But I'm not finna sit up here and have your dad high up on this pedestal of, I have to do everything your dad did, because ultimately your dad is divorced from your mother. Y'all see what I'm saying? Like, I could see if they had this long-lasting 50-year marriage. Yeah, I'm going to listen. Yeah, I'm going to listen to a lot of that advice. But he felt some type of way because he still hasn't met her dad. So he decided to set up a meeting with his godmother and his god sister. And this was to show her, look, I'm a family man. I'm serious. I want to get to know your family. He's like the coordinator of the family. He brings the family together. He'll call this person, that person. This is where we're going to meet for this holiday. We're going to have a Christmas breakfast. That's the type of man he is. And I really like that about him. You need somebody like that in your family because it's so easy for family to drift apart. So I really appreciate that about Shaq. From the beginning, we knew that Shaq had been involved in this very traumatic accident where he and his siblings and his mom were thrown from the car after they had an accident. He and his brother were tangled up in a barbed wire fence. His sister was just laying out in the middle of the road face down. Oh my goodness, it was just so hard to hear him talk about it because that was just so sad. And he also said that the hospital kept them separated from each other for 2 weeks. I'm like, did they have to keep them separated like that? He just felt traumatized from that. And because he didn't know how his family was doing, he didn't know, if they were alive or not. So when they finally eventually reunited, they just all broke down. And that was just so touching to me. Shaq really has been through a lot. And you could tell how resilient he is through how joyful he is. You would never know he would have been through something that crazy. And they told her, he's going to take care of you. You just have to make sure you take care of him in return. Because, that's just the kind of man he is. Later on, they're having a conversation and finances come up again. She was just saying, like, she knows people that buys their wives cars and houses. She brought that up once again. And he was like, well, are you married to them? And, Shaq got a mouth. And so he was basically like, you can't compare marriages because clearly Shaq is not in a place where he could do that right now. And two, just because you see somebody else do it, it's not monkey see, monkey do. And if you wanted somebody that could buy you things like that, you should have found your own husband. Why are you risking letting someone else choose your husband? You can end up with somebody like a Bennett. No shade to Bennett. But y'all remember Bennett, who was married to Amelia? He barely had a job. And Michael, who was married to Mika, who continuously lied about his job. I mean, you could easily get someone who is not financially stable. Shaq seems to be, but he's not in a place where he could just drop money on expensive cars and houses. And you should know that. That's not even something you could do for yourself, it don't seem like. And on top of that, you're putting huge expectations on someone that you're just now showing some affection. Because you were being very standoffish the majority of this season, to the point where he was getting annoyed with trying with you. You know what I'm saying? And now finally y'all done consummated, and now you done lost your mind and you think he should just owe you a house off the bat. She realized she looking bad, right? So she tried to hurry up and end the conversation. And he was like, oh, so you scared to talk about it? And she was like, no, I'm not scared to talk about it. He was like, okay, well, you don't want to talk about it. I do. Shut it down, okay? Shut it down, but kept it going at the same time. And so, you know, he was like, you're quick to avoid these conversations that we need to have. He told her, if you don't get what you want, you think of it as a failure. And she just kept joking around and playing. You need to calm down. I ain't mean like that, you know, playing. And he was like, well, you told me day one everything is a joke. And I'm sitting up here trying to have a serious conversation with you, and look at what you're doing. She was like, okay, whatever we get approved for is what we will get. Now she's trying to flip the narrative, because before you put it all on him, you told him he was going to have to buy you a house, and now all of a sudden it was a joke and she was playing. I can't with Kirsten, y'all. Like I said, last week I was having a little hope for them, but this week I'm just like, release Shaq to the community. Let him find somebody that will actually appreciate him. And you know what's really sad? I usually don't like to mix and match couples. I don't really like to do that with this show because we're talking about marriage here. But I really do believe that if Shaq was matched up with Jasmine, that would have been such a better match. I feel like Jasmine would have really appreciated Shaq, and I feel like that would have been a beautiful relationship for us to see on a show. It really could have brought things back full circle for Married at First Sight. Just seeing that little conversation, that one little conversation that they had, and the appreciation that he has for Jasmine. He not even married to her, and he really lifted her spirits. You know what I'm saying? That's what she needs. And then y'all could have put Kirsten with Airris, because they're both on the same level, shallow. And he already has a home. And I feel like he would be able, you know, he was attracted to her and everything. I feel like y'all really dropped the ball with that. Anyways, y'all let me know what y'all think down below. Do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me? I would love to hear your opinion. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And I'll see you in my next one. Peace.